Welcome to the Speaker Meeting, a space where we break the silence one story at a time. Every episode, you'll hear from someone who's been there, through the struggle of addiction, the turning point into recovery, and the journey after. Because no matter where you are, you're not alone. Recovery is possible, and hope is real. My hope is that by sharing these stories, you'll believe it to be true. My name is Chibbi. My sobriety date is April 5th, 2024, and this is the Speaker Meeting.
So my name is Nigel Williams. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I also work in the recovery field. And my sobriety date is December 9th, 2014.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, Nigel.
Of course.
I'm really excited to dive into the conversation with you and get to know your story. Before we started, I had you pick a random card out of a tarot deck.
Yes.
I started doing this. It was very last minute. I was like, I should incorporate tarot into this because I'm gay. And I don't know how familiar you are with tarot.
Only vaguely.
Great. So you picked the moon, and the moon is about kind of navigating the unknown. It shows up when we're being asked to walk forward, even when the path is unclear. It invites us to explore what's hidden, to trust our instincts, to face the illusions of fear that have been holding us back. You know, recovery is full of moon energy. It's uncertainty, it's vulnerability, and learning to trust yourself again. How does this relate to like your recovery, or does this resonate with your recovery or your journey through recovery and moving forward?
I think it does. I mean, I think it's very fitting for like right now, like I'm embarking on the journey of fatherhood. So like there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty. Like that is the definition of kind of this chapter that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
And then recovery, I feel like when you're being called to face your fears, that's what recovery ultimately is. Like you're being called to trust the unknown when you journey into this world of recovery. I mean, I'm sure as you know, like I feel like addiction or substance abuse or alcoholism, whatever people want to call it.
Yeah.
It's a disease of comfort. You know, it's a disease of known misery. And so we're being called to face our fears of this unknown and give up this comfortable misery that we're in to have something better.
I love the way you put that, comfortable misery.
Because what it is.
That's definitely what it was, for me at least. So then let's go back and start at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, like what was your relationship like with substances or addictive behaviors at the beginning, and kind of how did it evolve over time?
I like to think that like it hit me the very first time. Like the first time, also I can mention substances, right?
Yeah. You can mention whatever you want.
So like I had smoked shitty weed before, and that happens. Like the kind like that gives you more of a headache than a high. So the first time that I smoked not shitty weed, I feel like it changed instantly. Like I remember walking back to my house after like having hung out with my friends and like really like gotten high and thinking like, why isn't everybody doing this all the time? When I look back, you know, kind of what it meant to me, it felt like I'd been like wearing this backpack full of sand. And then over like time, I'd put a little bit more sand in and a little bit more sand in, a little bit more sand in. And I got used to that weight. And it was like the first time that I got high, I felt like I had taken it off. Like I didn't know that I could feel so light. I didn't know that I could breathe so deeply.
Yeah.
And so it immediately meant more to me than it meant more to me than it did to like my peers, my other friends that were also like dabbling with substances at the time.
Yeah. How old were you when this happened?
13, 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it that you felt like was putting all this sand in your backpack?
And that's,
I mean, the metaphor.
I think that I didn't get the answer to that until I got clean. I mean, I feel like if I knew what it was, if I knew how to get rid of it, I could have dealt with it sooner. I think it was just a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity.
Around what?
I think the big thing, if I remember correctly, I remember I was in like 5th grade and I found out what death was, and it messed me up. There was a counselor that worked at the youth center that I went to. He's my favorite one. And I came in one day and they told us that, you know, he'd taken his own life. And so like the concept of death like kind of hit. And I was like, okay, cool. That's a thing that can happen to people and will happen to me.
Yeah.
Because I remember for like forever after that, I'd be up awake at night. Like, what if it's tomorrow? What if I die tomorrow or in 2 days or 5 days? And what if? And so like that just grew and grew and grew. And then also this just feeling of not fitting in, that there was something that separated me from other people, and not in an egotistical way sometimes, but like mostly the way that there's just, there's something different. There's something that everybody else is picking up on and gets and understands. And I just don't know what that is. And so fear of failure, fear of just being found out. Fear of fear.
Yeah.
And we talked about comfortable misery. And so that's kind of what I would assume I was living in. You know, I also have struggles with mental health. And so I feel like some of those were probably burgeoning around that time or coming into fruition.
Yeah.
And, you know, as far as I know, this is everyone's first time being alive. And so when you're living dysfunctionally, but if it's all you know, it's like, well, yeah, this is what life is. This is what everyone just feels this way, I guess. And so getting high for me from that very first time, it felt like I had just dropped all of that, that there was no doubt, there was no worry. I could breathe again. And so when I talk to people that have never been in, you know, addiction or recovery, and they can't kind of wrap their heads around, why would people go to the lengths that we go to for our disease, for our addiction? It's like, because it means more to me than it does to you. Yeah. Like if we're floating at like a 0, right? Yeah. And like getting high for the average person takes them to like a 30. For me, I go up to a 40, but my baseline isn't 0. It's negative 20. Yeah. And so like, I would have done anything to not feel how I felt. Yeah.
You strike me as someone who's feels very deeply.
Yeah. I mean, I don't run from that today. Yeah. You know, I feel like that's like, I guess to run from my emotions is to live in denial, and that's to live in like not reality. It's to live in illusion. Yeah.
Very much so. So you said, you know, around 13, 14, started smoking weed. Where did it go from there?
So let's see, 13, 14, I was one of those ones where like the second it got in me, I immediately changed. My priorities immediately shifted. So if my friends weren't trying to get high, then they weren't my friends. I got to find friends that do want to get high. Typical teenage stuff that like my parents thought was angst, you know, grades are dropping, moodiness around the house, don't want to like be around anybody, kind of like, you know, secluding myself from the family. And that, again, teenage angst. And then when my parents found out I did the whole military school thing, wouldn't recommend it. Wow. Not great.
When they found out about your weed smoking.
Yeah. So I mean, when they first found out, they didn't flip. They didn't go crazy, but like the lengths that I was going to, and like they could already quickly tell that things were getting out of control. Not to mention like before that, I was feeling all those feelings, but I had no effective coping strategy for it. So like that turned into like violence and lashing out at school and all of these things. And so trying to give me order and trying to give me structure and doing the best they could. You know, we went to like a youth AA group that I ended up working at later in my life. And that kind of helped, but it didn't really work. Yeah. So we did the military school thing. That jump started my addiction. You know, people have this idea that like, oh, you'll go there and you'll get their order and structure. But what really happens is they take all the bad kids from all the schools and put them all in one school. And we just exchange tips of like how to get away with stuff. And if you haven't tried this, you got to try this. And so, yeah. There's a lot of trauma that happened there. And so I got exposed to drugs I hadn't done. So I got into cocaine a little bit. I got into pills a little bit. And just kind of got into fake bake, you know, spice space, got into that. And I think that really shifted my psyche in a massive way. Yeah. Because I was doing it every single day, massive amounts all the time. I got kicked out of there for drugs and for fighting. Went to treatment for the first time. And then the second time went to private school, graduated high school, went to treatment again right after high school for 3 months. And I think there I learned that like, hey, me plus drugs, not a good idea. Yeah. Like I knew that. And that knowledge kept me sober for like a year. Okay. Of like, hey, you can't do it. And so right around a year sober, I was like, man, I know I can't, but I really want to. And I could stay like that for about 6 months. Yeah. Then I went back to what I knew, and I told myself initially, I'm an artist, you know, my friends were going to the beach. They were going to take shrooms. I was like, you know what? I'll take shrooms. I'll get creative and I'll get inspired. And it'll be beautiful. Yeah. And I'm only going to do psychedelics because
really a drug.
It's not really a drug and it's natural and you can't get addicted to it. And so I took them and it was great. And I had a cool little creative time. And I woke up the next day and I could feel something different. You know, I could feel that like I was back at 0. Yeah. And I didn't want to be sober, but like I still feel like I lost something. And so now that I've opened the door to me doing substances, I was like, man, I feel bad and I know what will make me feel better. And so to make a longer story short, I went from shrooms to meth, 2 weeks.
Wow.
I picked up right where I left off.
Yeah.
Like I tried to go back to those initial days of smoke a little bit of weed, get the giggles, get the munchies, and it's fine. But I found, it's been my experience that like once I leave that phase, I don't get to go back into it.
Yeah.
When I pick back up, I go back to what I know. I pick up and I start the story where I left it off.
Yeah.
And so it just ran from there. A couple of charges, couple of trouble. I wound up living in a trailer, like all these things that like seemingly, society says weren't in the cards for me. I came from a good home. My parents made good money. They were both there, super supportive, super understanding, prioritized education, loved me endlessly. Yeah. Winding up in the places that I wound up, people would think wasn't in the cards, but addiction knows no boundaries. It doesn't care who you are, where you come from, what you look like. It'll still hit you just the same.
Yeah. And take control of everything.
Everything.
So you mentioned, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned you went to treatment both in high school and like right after high school, you said?
In high school, twice after high school, and then a couple more times after high school.
Okay. But those first couple of times when you were still, a minor essentially in treatment, I don't think a lot of people experience that, because I don't think I know for me, I was not cognizant enough as a teenager to be like, I have a problem. Maybe I should go to treatment.
Yeah. Neither was I. It was not my choice.
Yeah.
But I picked it. It's cool. It's weird. I got to work with teenagers once I got sober.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. Like my wife got sober at 16 and sober to this day. A couple of the kids that I worked with once I got sober got it real young, and they've kept it. And so I absolutely have no idea how they had any kind of ability to conceptualize spiritual malady or effective coping strategies, but it worked for them. I think for me, I needed more pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. I hadn't lost enough yet. I hadn't been hurt enough yet to think that this was a problem. I thought, especially this time, this is 2010, 11, 12. So like there's this big push for legalization happening across the country. Mm-hmm. And I'm on board with it. The truth that I had to arrive at is that like, I think weed is fine. It's just not fine for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And that took some figuring out. But that was the biggest hope that I had, was that like, man, if everyone would just leave me alone, let me smoke a little bit of pot, let me eat pizza, try to get laid. Because I was a teenager. It was like, if people would just let me do that, I'd be fine. And so going to treatment, like, I think it worked. I think it planted a couple of seeds, like that when I started progressing through my addiction, I could say, they did kind of talk about this a little bit. So I wish I could speak to like why I couldn't pick it up then. And some people do, but I think that's the $1 million question when it comes to addiction, right? Like I've got friends that went to the same treatment center that I got sober from that are dead now. And so like I was able to pick up the skills and the tools when I picked them up, and someone sitting right next to me couldn't do the same thing. So if we could figure out that, we could solve the addiction crisis in a second.
I think for a lot of people, I'll speak for myself, it's the nagging question of like, well, what if I just try this? Or what if I can control it up until here, right? It's like, we want to fuck around and find out, right? Yeah. We want to see like, how far can I push this and still have my cake and eat it too? Yeah. And sometimes we don't get to see the other side of that because we push it too far.
The way that I think the way it was put to me, or the way that I've arrived to, is like it's an analogy. Like once you bake a cake, the cake is baked. You can't take the flour out of the already baked cake. Can't take the eggs out. You can't take the sugar out. Like you baked this cake. Mm-hmm. And so that's how my addiction is, that like the fun stuff, the relief, all that stuff, it comes in tandem with the shit, with the fear, with the insecurities, with the lying, with the stealing and the debt. It's all baked together. And so if I try to take a bite of this cake but not bite into any flour, you can't. Yeah. It's all one thing. And so once I got that locked to my head, it made it easier. But man, was it tempting in the first days of like, I know. And for me, the big delusion was never that I could do meth recreationally. I wasn't that crazy. I was like, but I could probably like drink a little bit. Like I never had a problem with alcohol. I could probably just smoke a little bit of weed. And that delusion got me every time, that like I could just have a little bit of this and not let it get to the bad stuff. Yeah. And every time it did. Yeah.
Similarly, I had a heroin addiction. And when I got clean off of that, I was like, as long as I don't do heroin, everything should be good. Right? It's not me that's the problem. It was the heroin.
And then I've learned. And now I won't do it again. But the other truth is that like once I think for you and people like us, the second that I put something in my body I'm a different person. I tell people all the time, like, listen, I don't do meth. But the me that does coke, he'll do meth. But I don't do coke.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do that. But the me that drinks, he'll do coke. I don't drink, though. But the me that smokes weed, he drinks. And so that's like the progression for me, is that once I put something in my body, my priorities, my morals, and my I don'ts go out the window.
Yeah.
And every time I add on, and then I wind up where I wind up every single time.
So then what was the event or like series of events that led to like that moment of like, okay, something has to change, and I am going to make that change in my life, or it's going to be made for me?
It was at a funeral that I was at for like a decent friend. We weren't close. We weren't besties, anything like that. I was in treatment the last time I went, fingers crossed. And I got notified that, hey, my friend had taken his own life. And so I had my mom come pick me up so we could go to the funeral a couple days or a week later. And we can go there, and it's being held at the church that I used to go to when I was a kid, that had the AA for kids, like youth group thing. Yeah. And so I'm there, and I see people that I know, and I see kind of how we've changed or whatever. But the big kicker happens when I see my friend like in his casket, and his mom's there, and she's, how you would expect. And I'm there with my mom, and I'm looking at him. And I think in that brief moment, all of the excuses and reasons why that wouldn't be me kind of went out the window. Like, when you go to treatment or you hang around, that kind of crowd of people, there's always that one guy that's doing too much. And like, dude, I'm not that guy. And I had run out of those. Like when I looked at him, I was like, I can't see any reason why that won't be me. And everything shifted from being about drugs to not drugs to happiness, because he didn't OD. He took himself out. Yeah. And I realized, like, I haven't been happy in a long time, and I don't know how to be happy again. And to me, that was the key problem. That, okay, well, you're not happy. Well, you could. And I didn't have any more. I tried everything. I tried the psychedelic route. I had tried, well, I'm only going to use on the weekends. I had tried only after work. Well, only this. I had tried every kind of combination of me plus drugs or the drink or whatever, and it didn't work. I remember before going to treatment, I was sitting on my parents' back porch, smoking some weed, scrolling my phone, and I had been living the life that I had been dreaming of since I was 14. I worked at a pizza place. All I had to do was make pizza and deliver pizza. Easy job. My manager smoked weed, so I could smoke weed at work. I would just smoke weed and drive around handing out pizza all day. I got a girlfriend, so I was getting laid. Like, I had worked. I got exactly what I wanted. I had lowered my parents' expectations. They wanted nothing from me other than stay out of jail, stay out of rehab, and you're fine. No one was nagging. There was no more pressure to be anything more than what I was being. And I couldn't get high enough to make myself feel better. And that was a scary point, because there was nothing. There was no other reason why I was doing this. Yeah. And I had finally got what I'd asked for, and it didn't make me happy. Yeah. And so at that moment, at that funeral, there was nothing left. There was no ideas or strategies to get me to happiness that I hadn't already tried. And so I think that moment made me desperate enough to try something I hadn't tried yet. And so then what did you try? So I was in treatment, and in order to progress through their program, they would make sure that you got a sponsor and like worked your steps, and you had to be on, step whatever to go to the next house, and step whatever to go to the next house. Okay. So I got this guy, his name is Gary, rest in peace. This old white dude, tiny guy, and he sponsored like 1 million dudes. Sure. And so I went up to him, I was like, dude, what do you do, man? Like, it seems like you sponsor everybody. He was like, well, I do sponsor a lot of guys. I give back what's been so freely given to me, and I take guys through the steps. And outside of that, I'm retired, so I work on old vehicles. I restore old vehicles, and it's fun. It's cathartic, giving something new life. And then I go down to the shelter whenever I have space in my house, and I find, older adult dogs that are on their last legs, and I bring them home, and I give them a happy, joyous end to their lives. And I said, that sounds awful. I don't want to do any of that shit. I don't care about other people, but you do all this stuff, and you seem happy. Like, whenever I'd see this guy, he was always smiling and always happy. Yeah. I was like, you seem happy, and I don't know how to do that anymore. And also, I'd like to get out of rehab. So, like, I had to pick a sponsor. Would you be my sponsor? And he took me through, the first couple steps. I'm not going to harp too much on step work. First couple steps, and I got to the third one, which is, involves finding a higher power. And I started, like, trying to be philosophical of like, well, who among us can speak to the nature of the universe? Who can speak to the existence of a divine creator? All right, Socrates. And that's kind of what he did. He put me, right sides. They're like, hey, man, you were like getting high in a trailer like a month ago. Maybe we bring the ego down a little bit. It's like, listen, I know you're looking for a third option. You're trying to find some certainty into this whole thing. It doesn't exist. You can walk the spiritual route. You can walk the science route. You can walk the religion route. Every single thing comes to an unknown, and it's always going to. So you can sit at this turning point waiting for certainty about the nature of the universe, or you can try something you haven't tried before and have just an iota of faith in something else and see where that takes you. I was like, okay, screw it. So I started doing, more A step work, half-heartedly, half-assed. And then I was out at the smoking corner over there. This is what you do in rehab. You smoke.
Yeah.
And we were laughing.
You drink coffee.
Oh, God, yes. And so we're sitting there and we're laughing about something. And I realized that for the first time, and I couldn't remember how long, I hadn't thought about getting high that day. I hadn't woken up with that same voice and that same itch that needs to get scratched. And so for me, it was like, man, if I can put almost no effort into this and it can make the voice quiet, it can make what's going on in my mind quiet for a second. I don't have to pay for it. I don't have to steal for it. If just a little bit of effort in trying to better myself can make the voice go away, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
And that was a big game changer for me.
Okay. So then all that was happening while you were still in the rehab facility, right?
I was there for a year and 2 months. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I was been a minute there.
Which rehab? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, that was SOBA here in San Antonio.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was years ago. Yeah. It's been almost 11 years ago.
In case anyone's wondering.
In case they're wondering. Yeah.
Yeah. Where to go. But as a lot of us know, like rehab is a nice little incubator, right? Yeah. It's a little bubble, right? That your little safety bubble that you're sitting inside. So then once you got out of rehab, what then? I
got incredibly lucky. I moved into a house, wasn't sober living, but all the dudes happened to be sober. So that was cool. I did the whole rehab romance thing that I don't advise anybody to do.
Explain that.
It's, when you're looking for something to make yourself feel better, another person's always an option. It's not a good one, but another person is always an option. And it's a very welcomed reprieve from like looking at yourself and looking internally and like accepting some hard truths. Like I could do that, or I could go over here and this person thinks I'm pretty great and I can focus on that.
Yeah.
So I did the rehab romance. It ended really horribly. And I had never felt... Because I got to start doing drugs when I was a kid. I had never felt true like teenage heartbreak before. Oh. And so when this fling ended, I was beside myself. I was a mess. I felt like heartbreak for the first time because I never felt my emotions fully before.
Yeah.
And so like I felt horrible, that feeling of, being 14 and your first little crush doesn't like you back. And I hated it. And there's a lot of fear and insecurity and doubt surrounding this whole relationship, falling apart. And I just left treatment. I hated how I felt. And so I was at this crossroads of like, okay, cool. You just spent all this time in treatment. You spent all this time getting all these tools and these hypothetical things to do. Like, well, when you don't feel good, do this. Or when this happens, do this. Like, you've got this whole toolbox full of these things to do. Mm-hmm. You could put them into practice, or you could do what you've done in the past to make yourself feel better. So what are you going to do? And so for the first time ever since I left treatment, I was like, you know what? Let me try some of the stuff we talked about in therapy. So I got way into music and writing and doing more of my music stuff. I got way into going to meetings and working a program. And that for me was like the launching off point of like, how do I carry recovery into everyday life? I'm out of the rehab bubble. It's time. You're living. There are no drug tests. There are no, bumpers. Yeah. What are you going to do now that like it's real, life is happening and you don't feel good? And so that was my transition into like the real world again of like, hey, you can feel not good and still do good.
Yeah. Sounds like you kind of found an outlet for that.
Yeah.
In the music and the writing and the creativity.
Absolutely. I mean, that was, I guess, the balm while I got through it. But the real cure to that was the work that I did. Okay. Was the work to like, cool, something has happened in my life that I don't like. Mm-hmm. How do I get myself to be okay with it? Mm-hmm. And music makes me feel better, and it can help me put my emotions, make them more tangible. Mm-hmm. But the actual practice of like understanding your emotions, looking for your fault in situations, learning lessons, like that real work is, I think, what got me through it.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, I realized that while the way that the relationship ended was not my fault, I probably shouldn't have picked that person. Like
to begin with, right?
this is a young lady, first time in treatment, IV heroin user. Statistically, they have the worst chances of recovery. And also, I don't know why I would think that someone who's learning how to love themselves is going to be capable of loving me. It's just, and and that went further of like, do you have this fear of being alone? And is this fear of being alone driving you to pick just anyone to be with? Give me someone or something to love me so I don't have to learn how to love myself. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this recovery stuff, there's some stuff to this. There's some knowledge to be had.
It's the RuPaul of it all. If you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else?
It's very true.
So you mentioned the work, because it is work, mm-hmm. right? All this work and understanding your feelings and navigating your emotions and all of that. It's a lot of work, and it can be really difficult for people. What was your support system like for that? Or were you working at it alone?
No. I could never thank my parents enough. They're both normies, mm-hmm. so that they don't suffer from, this particular affliction. And they loved me, they loved me through it. They weren't perfect, but no one can be when you're dealing with an addict. But I never lost their support. My sister as well. There were some tough times for us. And then I was fortunate enough to make a lot of friends in recovery. Like I'm today, my closest friends all in recovery, my wife in recovery. And so I didn't have to walk the path alone. And that is one of the things that I like about, AA 12-step fellowships, is that if there's a community. But again, we're fortunate. We're in a pretty big city. Mm-hmm. So whether you are person of color, queer, if you walk the crystal angel numbers route, we got mm-hmm. that. If you walk the strictly religious Bible thumper route, we got that. Mm-hmm. If you're in between kind of where I'm at, where it's like more amorphous, that's there too. And so I was fortunate enough to be in a city where AA is accessible and good, because AA is great, but it's not perfect. And I really feel for the people that get the program, they get burned by the program. I really feel for them.
Yeah. I think, that's part of what this series is kind of for, is to show that there are multiple paths to recovery. Yeah. And a lot of it is kind of like forging your own path. Like this from this works for me, this from this works for me, this from this works for me, right? And making that happen. So then what does recovery look like for you today, and how do you keep moving forward?
I think the big part of recovery is practicing the principles that I learned. Like at some point in time, 10 years into this, it should be rare that I run into an occasion where I don't know what to do. If I've been in the practice of like feeling my feelings, dissecting my feelings, looking for behavior patterns within myself, I'm not going to be perfect, but I should be pretty well equipped to do that. I still go to meetings. I have to go to a bunch for my job. Okay. But in my personal life, I still go to some, not as many as I used to. So some AA people are going to give me shit for that. I know it's going to happen.
It's your recovery journey.
Yeah. And again, that's nothing with AA that I love and don't love, is that it is pretty rigid in some senses. And I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. In other ways, not so great. And I think I'm fortunate enough that like right now, a lot of it's just habitual. It's patterns. I mean, I got sober when I was 20. Mm-hmm. And so I'm fortunate enough that like, as I was getting sober, I was also building my life. And so some of the healthy behaviors that I need to do, I've just been doing them my entire adult life. Like if I run into conflict, okay, cool. I may get mad, but it's a practice now to look for my part in it, which is a big thing that people don't do, is like, I don't like this and it's bad because I say it's bad. It's like, okay, but what's your part in it? Nothing. I'm perfect and flawless. It's all that person. Yeah. That's a habit for me. I think one of the biggest gifts is peace. Yeah. I think once you find peace and you have it, you have a pretty good feeling when you start to lose it, when it becomes shaky. And so I have a very low tolerance for anything in my life that robs me of peace. Work being the exception. Sure. Work is work. Yeah.
But we prostitute ourselves here and there.
Yeah. And I get to help people, along the same journey. So I love that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to people, places, circumstances, if it's robbing me of peace, it's got to go. A fantastic support system. I have a lot of really close guy friends and a couple of strong women in the programs that check up on me. That if I'm not doing good, if I start slipping, I know will say something. I mean, I don't make it any more complicated than that. Yeah. I also try to do my best to stay present. It's not easy, but my form of meditation is trying to not let the future ruin the present. It's there's a million things that I need to do, but I can only do one at a time. So why am I focusing on the other 999,099 when I can focus on one?
Yeah.
And so getting in the practice of doing that, of, doing the next right thing. Yeah. I got to do a million right things, but just the next one is enough. If I do that, if I try to be good, and this is a critical one, if I am objective about who I am and how I live my life, I think it puts me in a good standing. I have a genuine desire to care how other people perceive me. I do my best not to let it, wreck my mind or wreck my day.
Yeah.
But I want to be a good person, and I don't rest on my laurels. I've seen some people do this that believe that they're good people. And it's like, cool. When's the last time you checked on that? It's like, no, well, I'm good. It's like, yeah, but what's the last good thing you did? Well, I'm generous. What was the last generous thing you did? So I gave a homeless guy $1 6 months ago. Is that the last generous thing you did? Or I'm kind, or I'm a good listener. All these positive attributes that I like to think that I possess, I make it a habit to check on them regularly of like, if I want to call myself a kind person, a patient person, I need to be able to speak evidence to that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just very true for people that we convince ourselves that we are nice and kind and gracious and whatever positive attribute you want to give yourself, but that's just a thing we believe about ourselves. There's nothing to back that up. And so I make it a habit of like, am I patient? Am I kind? Am I generous? Am I a good listener? Like, and if I can't find proof of that, I make it a habit of making that a goal of like, okay, cool. I want to be a better listener. So today when I wake up, let me read what my notes are. Cool. Listen more today and get in the habit of doing that. So it's, this journey of self-improvement that you try not to get stagnant with.
Yeah. A lot of what you're saying, definitely I can hear the step work in that, right? Yeah. That nightly inventory. Did I put back into the stream of life, or did I just take, and for all of the complexities of AA as an entity, what I do appreciate is that it is a simple program for complicated people, and it does give a framework for living, right?
It does. The hardest part is that there's no quality control. That's the one thing that I wish, and it's a good thing, because it makes it accessible as we can.
Yeah.
But and again, not to shit on the program. I love it. It's how I got clean.
Yeah.
But I'll sit in a meeting and we get to the end and say, okay, cool. Whoever is able to be a sponsor, raise your hand. And I'll see some hands go up and it's like, God help anybody that takes that guy, that girl, that guy. And so like, it sucks that way. Sometimes there is no quality control, or, I've been to meetings that have been so affirming and life changing. Like I've heard something that, man, I really needed to hear that.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to have that, but there's other people that walk into a meeting. It's like, yeah, man, I sat down and there was like 12 old dudes that talked about how much they don't like their wives, but they're glad they don't drink anymore. And that's all they think AA is. That's their only experience, or God help. And again, I know we're better and we're working on it, but the program is rough to women sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like there'll be an attractive girl in her early 20s that comes into a room and it's like, yeah, this was pretty cool. And then she doesn't know any better. Some guy's like, hey, you're new in recovery. Why don't we go grab coffee? And now her only experience with AA is that like this creepy ass dude tried to fucking talk to her.
Yeah.
And then did some. And so there are a lot of pitfalls. There are a lot of gaps. And so like, I really feel for the people that, have been hurt by the program.
Yeah.
And so if they're listening or watching, it's like, listen, it's not always like that. I'm sorry you had a bad experience. Like, go and find your tribe, because again, it's so diverse that I've met all kinds of people in the rooms. But I think I would be doing a disservice to not acknowledge some of the pain and some of the awkwardness and some of the inaccessibility that exists for some people trying to get to this program and trying to utilize it as a way to get clean or sober.
And that's something that I often say. I go into one of the rehabs here once a week and, take a meeting. And what I tell people is like, not all meetings are created equally, right? Jump around. When you first get out of here, find the one that resonates with you, find the one where you feel comfortable, right? Not all sponsors are created equally. No. If a sponsor's not working for you, fire that sponsor. It's okay, right? That's part of the process, right? And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that it's like your recovery journey is your journey, and you need to do what works for you, and take the pieces that work, and leave the pieces that don't.
Yeah. I think that took me a couple years to get to, if I'm being honest. Yep. I wasn't a staunch big book thumper, but like I was pretty rigid to it. And so I'd hear these other ideas of recovery and being like, man, that's not recovery. But like today, like, listen, if it makes you happy, and it makes you productive, I don't knock it. There's some things that, like, scientifically, that's probably not a great idea. Like I know there's a wave of California sober coming in. That's not my flavor. But, like, listen, if you can smoke weed and drink alcohol and you never have to touch heroin, I don't have a reason to get in the way of that. Yeah. Like, okay, I can't do that. But I think that's the thing we talk about, this personal recovery journey. It is personal, like, I don't think that I'm the arbiter of truth and that what I say and what works for me works for everybody. I mean, there are people, God love them, who believe in their heart and soul that they got sober through the power of Jesus Christ. I don't know. That didn't work for me. Like, I don't know if he missed me or if I was flying on the radar. It doesn't do anything for me. Yeah. But there are people who have their lives back, their families back through the power and love of Jesus. More power to you, man. Yeah. So, that's another thing is I don't need to play this game of comparison of, like, who's more whose recovery dick is bigger. Like, I don't care, man. If your wife talks to you again and you like yourself when you look in the mirror, go get ketamine infusions. Go do psilocybin. Go do ibogaine in the forest. Go pray to Jesus or Allah, whatever it does.
Go to South America and take ayahuasca. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I also say is, like, I'm not here to tell you how to get sober. I'm here to share with you how I got sober.
Exactly.
Right. And if that works for you, great. And if it doesn't, you need to find what works for you. And also, to touch on what you spoke on, for especially a lot of queer people in sobriety, God is an issue. We got qualms with the church.
God, yes.
And so it can be really intimidating to walk into a room where they're talking about God. And for a lot of us, all we've ever known of God was this, like, judgment, fire, brimstone, you're going to hell. A lot of us got cast out of the church, right? Like, it can be really hard for someone that already has that barrier to entry to move past the church of it all and understand that the God in this rooms is not the God of those rooms.
Yes.
Right.
I'm not trying to get political.
No.
Or controversial, but it baffles me to find some of the intolerance or just the lack of empathy in people for these rooms when it comes to, like, making this program more accessible. If you, any straight person watching this, cis, straight, whatever you are got going on, and you're watching this, like, and you love whatever religion you are, imagine, because I went to Sunday school, I did those things.
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, those Sunday school stories of that God built the mountains and the oceans and all the fantastic cities and all of the language and literature and beauty of the world. He did all of that, and he knew it wouldn't be complete without you. And, like, that God that loved you that much. So imagine being told that as a kid, and then fast forward 4 years and being told that that same person fucking hates you. Yeah. And if you can't imagine the trauma and the pain that would happen with that for a person who's trying to get into these rooms, like how hearing God would be painful, if you can't imagine that and try to make this program more accessible and more accommodating, how are you operating in recovery? How are you loving all that you're commanded to do?
Yeah.
I think it's a shortcoming. But again, I have nothing against Christians. I think my life was saved by Christians. There were people who prayed for me when I didn't care about myself. And I think some of the generosity that I was shown by people who felt that they were commanded by their higher power to love me. I think of the sober house manager who gave of herself freely because she felt compelled to by God, my first sponsor. Very Christian man. And he did what he did because he thought, it was the right thing to do. But I don't know. I feel like if you're ever, especially in the rooms, and we're trying to be a refuge for people, if you're ever doing anything that creates a barrier, that makes this program inaccessible to people, call your sponsor, do some work.
Yeah. I mean, we say it at every meeting. It's love and tolerance is our code. Others is our code, right? So, practice what we preach. A lot of what you were saying was also reminding me of a quote from Buddy Wakefield, a poet, where he says, "There's a very good chance I'm a bad person just trying to do the right thing." And I think understanding, to go back to what you were saying about, like, I'm a good person. No, we're just people, and we do good and bad things, and finding that balance of trying to make sure that we do more good than bad each day.
I mean, that was a big part of early recovery. I remember we were this counseling group. And she said, the therapist said, I want you guys to go around the room and practice saying, I'm a good person. And it got me, I was like, I'm not saying that. Like, Because I was like, listen, if we're being honest here, I've been being good for like 45 days. I've been being real bad for a couple of years. Like I felt like I hadn't earned the right to say that yet. And through recovery and through like working on myself, I feel comfortable saying that. Like, I look at the deeds that I've done and I'm far from perfect, but I feel like I've earned the right. And I feel like that's not to do the whole, like, if everyone thought like me.
No, not that addict mentality.
but truthfully, if everybody felt that they needed to earn the right to call themselves good people, that they had to consistently look at their deeds and their actions if they wanted the privilege to call themselves good and kind and loving and hardworking and empathetic, those are things we should aspire to be. They are not permanent states of being that, man, you go give to the Red Cross once on Christmas and now you're good for life. Check in quarterly at least. Like, man, how do I treat my wife or my husband when I get home? How am I with my kids? How do I treat my coworkers? If my mom calls and I know that she wants to talk and talk and talk, do I entertain it and listen because she just wants to love me? Like, we should always be in a state of aspiring. Yeah. That like, I want to be called these things and I want to do the work to earn those titles. I feel like a lot of people don't. Yeah. Again, not to get political, but right now we could use a little bit of empathy.
Yeah, very much so.
And a little bit of self-reflection and objectivity.
Exactly. Well, you've definitely given us a lot to aspire to.
Thank you.
In your story, in your path, and really, illustrating that it does take work, right? But we also put a lot of work into our addiction.
Yes.
A lot of work into our addiction. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
You ready to get into some rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. So fill in the blank. Recovery has given me
life.
What's one word you'd use to describe your recovery journey?
Imperfect. What's
a daily habit or ritual that keeps you grounded?
Oh my God. Objectivity.
I know it's rapid, but you can take your time with it. If you find yourself struggling or triggered, what's the first thing you do?
Pause.
This or that, morning routine or night routine?
Night routine.
Meditation or movement?
Movement.
Talking it out or writing it down?
Talking it out.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Name one book, song, or movie that's been meaningful to your recovery.
One book, song, or movie. Her, the one with Joaquin Phoenix, Scarlett Johansson.
That's an interesting one.
Oh my God. That was a good one.
That was meaningful to your recovery.
So very.
Wait, pause. I need to hear more.
Okay, let's break it down. I think, the main character's journey in that whole movie of just isolation and kind of taking an artificial way out of it, that becomes this obsession where, rather than putting in the work to make the connection with somebody else, you go with something artificial. And the artificial thing fails you after a while, and you kind of reach the end of it. Like, not to spoil the movie that came out 10 years ago for anybody.
Exactly, at this point.
But he reaches kind of the end of that path. And there's this quote that, I think it's some of the last words of the movie, where he says to her, "I've never loved anyone the way I've loved you." And she says, "Me too. Now we know how." And so I feel like that, my addiction was my first love. Like, I did everything for it. There was nothing and no one and nowhere that I wouldn't interact with or do to keep this thing going. And so like that, I guess it showed me the depth of how much I can feel and care. And I shouldn't care that much or feel that much. That's not love, that's obsession.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, watching the process of like, almost kind of taking the long way around. Like, I could have become the person that I am today without going through my addiction. Like, the tools, the knowledge, the skills, they existed well before I manifested on this earth. I could have taken this way, but I took the long way around. I had to go to the artificial. I had to go to the easy, to the fake, to the convenient. And I had to have that ruin everything and destroy me. And I came out better for it, and now I know how to love. So yeah, I wish I don't know, that it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Wow. People hated it.
No, I remember enjoying it, but now I'm going to have to go back and watch it with this new perspective, because you just blew my mind. And it was like, yeah, no, that's actually pretty accurate.
I love that movie. Yeah.
Okay. A piece of advice you return to when things get tough.
think it's the knowledge. It's the not even faith, it's belief. It's like, I've made it through everything else that I thought would kill me. I think I can make it through this too.
Cool. What's one phrase or mantra that keeps you going when things get tough? I need to rephrase that question.
Phrase or mantra?
Yeah. That keeps you going.
Oh yeah. I think we mentioned it before. Do the next right thing.
Mm-hmm. And if someone hears your story today and takes one thing away from it, what do you hope it is?
It's going to be cheesy, and I know we didn't delve into like a lot of the dark, icky stuff that I went through in my addiction. But if anything, I just want people to know that hope is there. Recovery is possible. Like, I wish I could impress upon anybody. Like, whatever you think you've done or been through or felt or said that no one else has done, I promise you, I've met someone who's lived through it and is happy today. I don't care if I'll get crazy. I don't care if you've killed someone. I don't care if someone tried to kill you. I don't care if no one who was supposed to love you has lived up to the task. Like, you're worth it. Recovery is possible. Do not stop trying to fight.
That's it for this episode of The Speaker Meeting, breaking the silence one story at a time. A huge thank you to our guests today for sharing their journey with us. Recovery isn't easy, but conversations like this remind us that we're not alone and that change is possible. If you're struggling, know that there is help and there is hope. You don't have to do this alone. For immediate support, you can reach out to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. It's free, confidential, and available 24/7. And if you'd like to share your own story, I'd love to hear from you. You can submit your information at geminisproductions.com/thespeakermeeting. And if this conversation meant something to you, help us spread the word. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. The more we talk about recovery, the more we remind people that they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, recovery is real.